Hi, I'm glad to have you here, and I'd like to ask you if you like our series of summaries and highlights from the books of the Bible, that you already leave your thumbs up in this video, and also leave us some comments, say something that God has spoken to your heart in this walk with us, and also help us to share and spread our series so more people can be reached and blessed by the power of God's Word. Let's talk about Ezekiel, who is one of the greatest prophets in the history of Israel. He lived in one of the saddest and most difficult periods in the history of God's people, when Jerusalem was dominated by Babylon. 3 dominations took place. One in the year 605 before Christ, which was when Daniel was taken captive to Babylon. Another in the year 597 before Christ, and it is at this time that Ezekiel is also taken to Babylon. And another one, which was the final defeat of the Jews, which occurred in the year 586 before Christ. Ezekiel, when he was taken to Babylon, was about 25 years old. He was a priest and was taken as a prisoner. And there, when he is on the banks of the river Kibar, he receives the call from God to be a prophet and announce his message to those people. It is very interesting to realize that where there were people of God, he raised a prophet to be with his people and bring his message to comfort or confront his people. For those who were rich and wise, who were taken to the palace, there was Daniel. For those who were taken to Babylon to be slaves, God sent Ezekiel. And for those poorer, simpler people who were left in Jerusalem, there was Jeremiah among them. So it is interesting to realize that where there are God's people, there he raises men and women to announce his message. God does not leave his people helpless. God is always attentive, always willing, and always wants to bring an appropriate word to his people. It does not matter what situation we are in. The name Ezekiel means God straightens, and is the name that has everything to do with the ministry he exercised, because as he acted for a suffering people, sad people who felt defeated and without hope, what they needed most was a message of encouragement and straightening. Therefore, the idea that God is the one who straightens was fundamental to those people in those circumstances. The messages of this prophet always called much attention because he was always guided by God to communicate his message in a very instructive way, so as to be understandable to everyone. In one of these messages, he was even warned by God that he would lose his wife, and that he could not mourn for her because it was an inevitable loss. And on that same day, he loses his wife. He becomes a widower and does not weep for her. This happens to illustrate and to represent to the people the inevitable suffering that the nation of Israel would still go through. Although Ezekiel brings messages of condemnation, not only for Israel, but also to some other neighboring nations, he also brings a message of renewal, hope, and restoration by announcing that the fate of Israel would be changed, that God would be with his people and the things would be solved again, and God would remain the God of Israel. The last word in the book of Ezekiel is the expression Jehovah Shammah, which means God is there. So no matter where God's people are, God will be there, and his presence brings refreshment, peace, comfort, hope, strength, joy, and salvation. This prophet is also often called by God as the Son of Man, an expression pretty well known to us, since this is how Jesus refers to himself on several occasions. Known passages as the figure of the Athaliah and also the passage of the prophecy of the Valley of Dry Bones are stories that involve this prophet. The text of this book that I would like to highlight is in chapter 36, verse 26, in which God says a wonderful promise for us, as He affirms that He will take from us the heart of stone and give us a new heart, a heart of flesh. We all need to search our hearts and allow God to take away our hearts of stone, which so often makes us insensitive and indifferent to God's matters and to the matters of our neighbors as well. We must not have a heart of stone, but a heart of flesh that moves and that is moved by the things of God, by the things of our neighbors who are suffering. We must allow God to take away from us the heart of stone and give us a heart of flesh. Because if this happens, He will be happy in our relationships, and the name of God will be glorified. And that, therefore, is my prayer for your life. May God bless you, and I see you next week.